Hello everyone, this is recording in post Miser Luke to talk to you about the biggest battle the Promethean Directive has ever and hopefully will ever see. This came about as a result of a minor miscalculation on my part, combined with the full intention of a couple nations to see how far they could push the rules. So we ended up with a battle that had a total cost of 17 million materials, which we had to figure out a way to divide. We split it in half and just deleted half of it, basically. So we would only ever run half the material, so we're down to 8.5 million. And then from there, we split it into 4 battles, 2 of which were identical. So we only ran 1 of those. We've got 3 battles, each with about 2 million materials in them, maybe more. And then these 3 will represent the total results of all 8 sub-battles that could have happened. So yeah, thankfully, a lot of things getting nerfed in terms of productions. That won't happen again. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the massive battle going on here. It took over 3 hours to film, I think, in person. But this will run less than half an hour since we're using the in-game recording. The first battle features quite a few ships from Mjolnir up against a pretty good set of manifestations of miseries. You can see the floating flames there are showing how the ship is protected by the Emperor himself, or His Eminence himself. He keeps their missiles safe. The thing that we were always noting as this battle went on is just how important the target prio was. So basically the miseries would pick 1 or 2 ships that they did not like, and those ships would just get burned to death almost instantly. So you can see that it was those missile cruiser kind of ships that were taking fire for a little while. I think before I started talking about the actual battle itself, we saw some of the other smaller craft getting obliterated. But the biggest ship on the Mjolnir side has avoided most of the fire, and will continue to do so for quite a while. Yeah, you can see these guys getting pretty beat up. Oh yeah, you can see there's some planes too. But the Azure is the big boy ship on the Mjolnir side. It's got 5 big guns. Oh yeah. Meanwhile, that guy's just getting roasted. The issue that was diagnosed in post with the Azure is that it doesn't do a good enough job of finishing off enemies. We'll get to the results before too long, but it was noted that a lot of the miseries were left at about 80% health, and none actually get killed in this battle. And because of how they're built, like 80% might be crippling on another vehicle type, but the miseries have their missiles embedded so deep that 80% does basically no reduction in combat effectiveness. Here we can see the Azure finally getting targeted now that the other bigger ships are dead. It's got 1 disabled turret that's had broken for most of the battle, and then you can see the other ones are slowly getting taken down. Another one's disabled, you got 1 taking damage. And I think from this point onward there's only 1 functional turret on the Azure, which is that forward 1A turret. And if you've seen the miseries, then you know that you're definitely not going to bring down a whole fleet of them with just 1 gun. Some of them are pretty severely damaged. Oh, there goes one of the planes. I think there's still going to be 2 or 3 left after the Azure dies, eventually. Yep, nothing much going on. You can just see it getting torn apart. There's about one, like, heavy armor triangle wedge that's holding the stern on right now. There, you can see one of the float planes. Now, because it's in a death spiral, it can get despawned at any point in time, because crashed or death spiraling aircraft, light aircraft, can't survive a battle. And that's everything. There's just one creature left in space as the aircraft. There's the tally. And on to the second battle. This one, again, has some Mealtiran vessels, but they are this time supported by 6 agonies. And you are about to see the first of many missing diff salvos. And yes, I do mean many. It'll become a bit of a running joke. So yeah, massive missile salvos on both sides. The agonies are basically submarine versions of the miseries. Another diff miss. Are you ready for another diff miss? Oh, that one actually, I think, dinked the little bridge structure there. Now, in addition to this being a 17 million cost battle, the Ipswichian side had a huge advantage in materials. It wasn't like it was 8 versus 9 million. No, it was like, I think 12 million versus 5 or something like that. You can see these bombers that were imported from the Sector 7. I almost said KE there. To carry some tanks, and those tanks got set up over on the shore. I'm not sure. We'll see them eventually. But they were then retrofitted to be covered in rubber and designed for ramming. And they did some damage. Yeah, there's the tanks. Unfortunately, they didn't get a very good spawn because just the terrain that we had here. And they got respawned because of that, but then they also, again, sunk into the water. Were this like the main game, maybe more diligence would be put into placing those correctly, but for the beta, it really doesn't matter. And you'll see by the end of this battle that it also really doesn't matter. This battle won't be quite as decisive as the last one, but it'll still be pretty impressive. Following another diff pull that is nowhere near close to where it was supposed to go. Doing a quick health check. Feel free to pause if you want to check more thoroughly yourself, but I won't bother to. I just want the recording to go on. Get through it all. Finally, there's a diff pull that I think that bounced. I'm not certain. It goes by way too fast in the post-recording mode. At this point, there's been some decent damage and or casualties on both sides, but it's still almost up in the air who can win. You can see some torpedoes from the Mealtiran side, I believe. Yeah, there's the tanks underwater. And this cruiser very narrowly avoids ramming the downed plane. There's another diff pull missing. Yeah, that plane also got despawned because if a light aircraft vehicle type is crashed, then it can't survive the battle, meaning it's at the liberty, or it's at the discretion of the battle filmer to despawn it whenever they want. or diff pools doing minimum damage. It was hypothesized after the battle that the diff pools may have only been spawning half as many frags as they should have, due to the projectile limit being almost reached by the missiles. Which is entirely possible, and hopefully we won't have battles nearly this big again, even at the reduced size. Because even with this being about 1/8 of the total battle, you're still looking at over 2 million materials. And I hope most battles won't be that big. Or that they'll be a rare, like, once in a war kind of thing. There's an agony that's lost its masts entirely. You'll also see, and I'll say this now in case I forget it later, that the agonies will automatically surface if they get too close to 80% sinking. At which point they don't last too long before the barrage of incendiary, but they still last a little bit. Ooh. There we have the spear-long, I believe. Slightly beating itself. And there's a couple miseries / agonies despawning. The torpedoes do decent damage, but there's not nearly enough of them to make a dent in the miseries. We're only a little bit over halfway through this battle at this point. Now that both sides have taken some damage, the rate of damage is slowing. But the miseries and agonies both are still putting out pretty good damage. Doing another health check. You can see decent damage been dealt to quite a few people, and the tanks are now finally taking some attention. They'd be safe if not for the torpedoes and the proximity fuses, because the proxy fuses are barely able to activate on them. There's an agony that has surfaced because it's below health. Still firing most of its missiles, but you can see that the forward bay is damaged. During the main season, I should probably spend more time looking at blueprints so I can speak more intelligently about them and their strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. Or at least about how I think this are playing into a given battle, without compromising OPSEC too much. But we'll have to see how much time I have. For me, the doing a good job battle filming is always secondary to just keeping the turns running. I feel like I would love to have a dedicated battle master who does all of the battle filming and battle setup stuff, and just leaves me to run the turns and the roleplay stuff. But for now, it's not too terrible to do both. There's There's an agony getting 2 damaged. Another health check. You can see that the sides are dwindling. Not nearly as many craft left as they used to be. And it's all pretty spread out. The only downside by using spawn sticks is that you can no longer see individual ships placed on the tactical map like that, or the strategic map. Because it shows you the fleet level instead. You can see that decent damage is still getting done by both sides. And lots of missiles are still flying. Great shot. There's another agony about to surface, I believe. Or, no, he's still got a little bit more he can take. But there are not many agonies left, and it's pretty clear at this point which side the battle's going to go to. The closest thing to a counter for the agonies is submarines, but you've got to go probably a little bit deeper than that to improve your survivability. Very shortly we'll see the last agony get killed, and this misery you're seeing now will survive the battle. There's the agony surfaced, and we went ahead and killed him to get things moving. Okay, now to the final battle out of 3. This battle here would be, if we're doing things properly, this one would be run 4 times. Representing over half of the material cost of the battle, with the previous ones run twice for all 8. But it's fairly clear, especially when you're doing when you don't have any weapons that are like critical hit seeking, then battle outcomes should be fairly consistent. So we really didn't care to run a lot more battles than we needed to, and it would have literally taken another 5 hours minimum. So, in this one, the agonies are outnumbered, though not by a huge amount. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but there's a lot on both sides, even after having divided it in quarters. And as usual, both sides have picked a few primary targets to go after. the missiles are reasonably focused on one or two targets, but not completely. I think mainly because they're a mix of remote guided and laser. They're always able to follow the target prio of the mothership. I believe they are anyways. There's a chance there's some other types, but I think it was mainly those two. And yep, if you're wondering, the whole battle's like this, just watching miseries and agonies die, leaving us in misery and agony. Or at least the computer was. There we see an avatar surfacing due to damage, although it seems to have lost target prio. There's another avatar surfacing to avoid the target prio, or to avoid being below 80% seeking. Normally battles will get published a lot sooner than this one is. But whenever I have free time, I find, or yeah, time before anything else will need to get posted, I find that I take as long as I have time to get stuff done. So given there's not going to be any new battles till we start in another week, I was like, I don't need to get these edited and uploaded until closer to then. But hopefully during the main run I'll remain fairly timely with my video editing and not build up like a 3-week backlog like I had at the end of season 1. Maybe not 3-week, maybe 3-turn backlog. Hopefully there's not too much background noise, either from me moving, my chair creaking, or other people in the house speaking. I always like to use the VC recording from the day of, because it saves me having to give a in-post voiceover. And we get to see all the humor that was humor and the in-jokes that were expressed at the time. Like, yeah, we got a discussion of, hey, what's the targeting view look like for error, and just wait till the C starts vanishing. Wow. Are you ready for Space Battle? Space Battle Throne. Because this battle was, of course, fought to defend the capital of Throne. Or the capital of Ipswich, which was Throne. Now, if I really had the energy to put effort into this, I would have totally edited a small clip of Subway Surfers when it was on the green screen mode, but I won't. There's another Avatar of Agony despawning. And the battle goes on. Just a lot of missiles left. And by the way, the battle filmer for this one was Chad Review. Huge thanks to him for running it on his PC, because goodness knows I couldn't run it on mine. I'll try to get an upgraded PC for this summer. Both because I just want to upgrade my PC because it's like 8 years old at least. And I want to be able to run the smaller battles a little bit faster. I'm not sure why we were getting lag in the battle replay there. Because it really shouldn't, unless it was like a slowdown due to an explosion or something. Which is always possible. It's funny looking at the battle in space like this. But honestly, not a lot different from earlier. If these craft, especially if the missiles were to like more light in color, then the space view would be, I think, really cool. Or if they were like larger or closer. But as it stands at their size and color, you can't see them much better than when they were just in the water. I suppose you can see the agonies better because they're no longer below water, they're just slightly lower in space. Oh, and back to the real world we go. I believe we were trying those to see if it would improve performance at all, but I think our conclusion was that the game speed is limited by the missile thread, and if not the missile thread, then the physics thread, and neither of those are relevant to GPU. So the GPU stuff, like the ocean, doesn't matter. It's always going to be CPU limited to the fastest thread. Only a few more minutes left before all of the agonies are put out of their misery by the miseries. So this ultimately ends in a rousing victory for Ipswich, the defenders, with the final outcome. Let me see if I can find what the outcome actually was. Out of 108 defending miseries, 41 effectively were killed. So between actually outright killed and ones that were damaged, 41 miseries worth of materials were removed from battle. Which is only about 4 million materials. And even less spreadsheet materials because of the fact these guys were discounted. There's an agony slowly getting worn down. Once they surface, it doesn't take too much for the missiles to eventually get hit, or just for the whole thing to get chunked down below 55%, which happens here. That's everything. Thanks for watching.